good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're at. My name is Michael Castillo, and I'm a sales engineer with Egenera. And thank you for attending today's webinar. Today's webinar is going to be focused around the new features in Pan Cloud Director 2.1. So first of all, let's talk about what and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go through a few slides first, and then we'll sort of get into the product demo, and I'll start to show you what some of those new features are. So what is what we call Egenera Cloud Suite? Okay, Egenera Cloud Suite, or ECS, is really two products integrated into one. So you have the front-end Pan Cloud Director, which is what I'm going to show you today, and then you have a back-end software package called Pan Manager. And so both of those integrated together is what we call the Egenera Cloud Suite. Now you can run these two products independently of one another, but to get the best feature functionality, then running both of them integrated at the same time is the best bet. And so what Egenera Cloud Suite allows you to do is really sort of, it's a cloud management platform, okay? So it allows you to, if you're an enterprise company, it allows you to build up a private cloud with resources. Or if you're somebody like an MSP, it allows you to build out a public cloud for your customers to be able to consume your resources. And so the nice thing about Pan Cloud Director is that it's very simple to use. It's really designed around sort of a simple drag and drop type of palette feature. So what happens is you can deploy, design, manage, and protect all your resources that you build out within the Pan Cloud Director palette. And again, you'll sort of see some of this as I go through some of the features in 2.1. So the software also, again, it sort of provides data center operators with because it's a single UI that you can do all this through. And you're going to be able to design both virtual resources as well as physical resources. It's got a show back, charge back function. It's got billing. You could do reporting on the usage. So it allows you to have this whole cloud platform through one interface. All right. So let's talk about what some of the new features are in Pan Cloud Director 2.1. All right, so we've added support for Microsoft Hyper-V. So that adds to our list. We now support both VMware and Hyper-V as a hypervisor, and you can mix and match your VMs within a single environment. Again, I'll show you this as we walk through the demo. We can do auto deployment of Microsoft Hyper-V host. This is something we can also do within VMware. What this means is that when you integrate it with Pan Manager, you're able to provision bare metal physical systems. And so what you can do is you can spin up a Hyper-V host by putting in some of the necessary information. And again, I'll go through this. And with the click of a button, when you build it out, it's going to provision this bare metal host and also load Hyper-V on it. And later on in the year, we're also going to be able to allow you to spin up a Hyper-V host and load System Center on it as well. Currently with VMware, we can build out a full cluster, say a 2 or 3 node cluster within VMware, load a vCenter vApp on it on one of those hosts, build up a data center, import that into Pan Cloud Director, and use those resources. So we're going to get that sort of feature that we have now with VMware. We're going to be doing that a little bit later on in the year with Hyper-V. Hello? It's just that, yep. Hello? Right now, we can auto-deploy the actual Hyper-V host. So next one, single user for LPAN integrated in hybrid environments. So we have this concept in Pan Manager called Logical Processing Area Network, or sort of think of it as multi-tenancy. And so it allows you to sort of create this cage or this virtual partition around a set of resources that you can dole out based on roles and responsibilities that you set up within your users. And so what we used to do with Pan Cloud Director is you'd have to create a customer for a physical environment and another different customer for a virtual environment. And so we sort of had to make that a little bit easier, and we can now create one single customer. And by different roles and responsibilities that you give access to, you can then be able to have access to physical resources. And with that, you can also give access to both virtual, physical, and public cloud resources as well. So support for IBM Flex System hardware. Another thing that sort of goes back to Pan Manager. Within Pan Manager, we support multiple hardware OEMs blade chassis. So we support HP, Fujitsu, NEC, the IBM Blade Center H, and now the IBM Flex System through Pan Cloud Director. And you're going to be able, you can provision those different blade chassis or blades or physical servers within each one of those blade chassis. And I'll kind of show you what that looks like. Billing improvements. We've added the ability to do usage-based billing. So before it was, let's see this as well. As you build out an environment, you're going to get a running total of what it's going to cost for that environment, and that's based on a monthly cost. But now within that, you can also get down to a day cost. And now we've went even further, and now you can do usage-based billing, and you can get down to the hour. So I'll kind of show you where you can set that up, and that's sort of based on. Well, I'll go into that a little bit more. New user roles. So before we did have some roles that you could set up. We've added another administrator type role to kind of get even a little bit more granularity in giving the roles and responsibilities. So I'll go through that. Active Directory, we now support Active Directory from a user authentication standpoint. We can, when you go to create a user within Pan Cloud Director, you can associate that user with, or you can pick an Active Directory user and not have to set up a different user within Pan Cloud Director. You can associate a user you may already have set up an Active Directory to it. Now you can't, at this point in time, associate any kind of group policies with it. The roles and responsibilities are going to be set in Pan Cloud Director. We are looking toward a little bit more integration with Active Directory. So Active Directory currently is really authentication only. And then OS customization. This is really more about VMware, and obviously you can, when you clone VMware, or VM, excuse me, you can run or have some customization scripts that run, you know, things like the IP address and the license key and the host name and time zone, things like that that you can, you know, have a customization script after you clone a VM. Well, there's certain OSs that VMware doesn't support to do that customization script, and we allow you to do those. So things like FreeBSD or Debian or OpenBSD, those type of OSs, they're not supported from the customization script. We allow you to have a customization script in there. So this is the Pan Cloud Director portal. The way Pan Cloud Director sort of is architected is almost around almost like a three-tier, or let's think of it as a wholesaler, reseller, and user customer. If you're, say, like an MSP, or if you're an enterprise and you've got an internal IT department, you can think of that internal IT department, and then you got your other departments that are going to be supported from your IT department. So I could log in here. I can log in as, say, I'm going to log in as a reseller or as a payroll department. Okay, so let's log in. Now, the one nice thing about this is it can be rebranded as well. So this says Egenera here, but again, if you were a reseller and you wanted your name to be here, you could do that. Or you can have your company name here if you were, you know, internal IT department and you wanted to show your company name, you could do that as well. So this can be rebranded. So now, as you see, this is my initial screen here, and I've got my companies listed. So as a reseller, I've got these companies signed up that are using Pan Cloud Director. Now, if I wanted to add, say I signed up somebody new, let's go ahead and add a company. So let's add the ABCD company. And we'll just give the basic information here. And the user. So right now I don't have an Active Directory set up in my environment, but this is where you would tie in, and that's why I put this user in here. If I had an Active Directory tied into this, and I'm about to show you where you enable that. This is why it's grayed out, because I don't have it enabled right now. But this is where you can get, from the drop-down standpoint, this is where you would get your Active Directory user from. That way you wouldn't need to create this user here. You could just use your current Active Directory user, as well as a local Linux user. So PCD runs on top of Red Hat Linux. So whatever server you're running PCD on, if you had a local Linux user that you wanted as well, we also support a local Linux user from here as well. I'm going to enable customer and do this. Now we also talked about billing by usage as one of the new features. This is where you would check to have the ability to have billed by usage for a particular customer. So as I spin up my new customer that I signed on, then I'm going to check whether I want them to be able to build by usage or not. So I'm going to go ahead and keep that selected. So I talked about, I'm not going to create an environment just yet. I talked about this portal. There's also another portal called the CMS, which is the Content Management System. And that's the back-end administration portion of PAN Cloud Director, and this is where you would set up a lot of things. So in terms of, I talked about the Active Directory support. I come in here to my general, my application settings, and I edit. And if I go down to the bottom here, then this is where, from a global standpoint, I would enable my Active Directory and also my local Linux login as well. Now you also see here about the fixed billing monthly hours. So when we talk about usage-based billing, we are talking about, we're giving this as an hours per month, okay? So we're taking this as a standard of 720 hours per month. So when it does the formula for calculating the usage-based billing, you'll see as you build out the environment, there's going to be a cost associated with each resource that I move onto my pallet, and you're going to get an end price there. Well, it's going to use that price against the 720 hours per month that we've set here as the formula for how it's going to bill for the usage-based hourly billing. Now you can change this if you want. I also have 730 down here. So whatever number you feel appropriate that you want to put in here, you can. We just happen to use a standard of 720 hours per month. Okay. Now that I have a customer, now I need to add some users to that customer. All right. So if I click on Tools, Manage Users, as you see here, I've got some users already set up. But if I wanted to add a particular user, here again, I can put my first name, last name, all the details, and here again is a spot where I can integrate with Active Directory and pick an Active Directory user instead of creating a new user, a different user. So instead of logging into your network with one user and then logging into PAN Cloud Director with a different user that you set up in PAN Cloud Director, again, will allow you to integrate with Active Directory. You can select that user that's already set up in Active Directory. It can authenticate into PAN Cloud Director. Same with the local Linux user. Now, I talked about the roles that we had down here. So we've got 4 roles that you can set a user up to. You've got the 2 administrator roles, a monitor, and an operator. So the 2 administrator roles, there's a difference between an administrator and an environment administrator. So let's take the example of this is an MSP, and I've got all these different customers. Well, as an MSP, you're going to have your internal IT department, and you're going to want those guys to be able to have admin rights to all these guys to be able to support them. So they would be an administrator role. That administrator role would have admin rights to make changes, start up, shut down servers, make changes to environments, provision new environments, all the different things that an admin can do within here. But say for the Bimart company, there was a guy in the Bimart company that wanted admin rights to just his company and his environment. So you could set that up as an environment administrator. Then if you give that role to him, then he only has access to the Bimart company and its resources that you've provisioned. and he'll be able to do all the different things that an admin can do for only that Weimar company. All right, an operator is going to have rights to log into boxes, start up and shut down boxes, but not make any changes to any environments and not create any new environments. And then the monitor role is strictly read-only, display-only for everything. All right? So really the big change here is between the two different administrator roles that we've got a little bit more granularity. And you can also create groups. So, if you had a number of people that you want to have admin rights to, you could set up like a Weimar admin group that I've got set down here. And so you can throw a bunch of people in the Weimar admin group, and then they would have admin rights to just that. Okay? All right, so what I've done already is and I'm going to show you something here in a minute, I've created a user 1, 2, and 3 with the different roles that we have here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log out from the demo. I'm going to log in as user 1. And what you'll see here is me having access to all, you know what? Here's what I need to do. I'll take that back. I need to go back and do something. I'm not going to have any rights to anything. It's going to all be grayed out. Okay? And that's because I needed to define in the company what user has what access. So let's go back. All right? All right, so I've got this ABC company that I created. So what I can do is I can edit this, and then there's an additional tab here called permissions. So what happens now is I've got 3 different tabs. My environment administrators I've got set up, operators, and monitors. So I can just take my user 1 that I've created, move him over to this side. He now has going to be environment administrator for this particular company. I can go to operators, click on my user 2. He's now going to have operator privileges for this particular company. And again, the same thing with monitor. I can choose user 3, and he's going to have monitor access for that. So now that I've got my permissions set up for that particular company, I can log out, log into user 1, and now the other customers will be grayed out, but the ABCD company I will have access to create an environment. And there we go. So now I could go into my ABCD company, which will then take me to my designer screen, where I can then build out an environment. As you see, other things are grayed out. As well as there's some, like you're not going to be able to manage users because to manage users you'd have to be an administrator, a regular administrator. So now I've got my designer palette. Okay, now we're going to come back to this. Let me X out of this. Now we're going to come back to that. But what I wanted to show you again is now I talked about the support for IBM Flex, and we actually support, Fujitsu, NEC, and HP. Now my system that I'm demoing here, I've got integrated in HPC 7000. But what I wanted to show you is here's another demo system that I have. I just want to quickly show you what it would look like with different hardware vendors that we support. What you could do. So I've got this other system here, and if I go to P nodes, which P nodes really are terminology, just physical nodes. As you see here, my Pan Cloud Director is supporting, this particular one is supporting multiple chassis. So to be able to provision a physical server, I've got a Fujitsu blade. I can go to do it off an HP blade, an IBM Blade Center, and then of course the new IBM Flex. So it's as simple as being able to provision a server, move a new physical server over, and then assigning one of my blades in my chassis to that. Okay, so again, being able to support multiple things. Again, MSPs that have many different types of hardware platforms in their environment. This is going to allow you to present those resources out, and even give you leverage in terms of being able to go to those different vendors and leverage that and say, I can support all these. So what kind of pricing you can give me this month or this time? Because I can go down, I can go to HP and get better pricing if you were buying Fujitsu. So you can support multiple hardware vendors underneath PAN Cloud Director with PAN Manager. All right. Let me close out of this. We'll go back to my other demo system. I'm going to log back in with demo. I'm going to show you about the spinning up a Hyper-V host, auto-deploying a Hyper-V host. All right. And so with PAN Cloud Director, with PAN Manager integrated in with PAN Cloud Director, we're able to spin up physical hosts. And with that, the ability to create a Hyper-V host. So I'm about to, once this comes up, go to my Resources tab. It's much like it did. So what happens is an administrator will spin up a physical resource. And then once that resource is spun up, depending on the roles, the responsibilities, the environment administrator, then I can allow access to that physical resource that we spin up. So as you see here on the left, it looks a lot like that other palette that I showed you earlier. You've got your cost in the right-hand corner over here, what it's going to cost you per month. It's going to give you a running list of your configuration. I've got my designer palette, and I've got my resource catalog over here. And now, again, this is for a physical resource only. Once I show you the virtual resources, there are going to be many more resources over here that you're going to be able to pick from. But I talked about being able to do both from VMware and a Hyper-V standpoint. But let's take the Hyper-V one because that's the new one. So I drag my physical host over here. I can assign it a blade, much like I did over there. This is an HP blade that I assigned it. But when I go into the properties of this Hyper-V host, I can call it, whatever I want. I can pick the boot, the boot target. But the big thing here is the Hyper-V properties. And so you put in all of this information here for your Hyper-V host. And when I click on OK, after you've put in all that information, then when you click on Save and Build, when this goes to provision, and it's going to talk to PAN Manager in the back end, then it's going to go ahead and load Hyper-V on this particular host. That way when it's done, and you're going to get an email letting you know when the provisioning is done, then there's going to be Hyper-V loaded on it, and you can import that into an existing Hyper-V cluster that you have, or then you could turn around and load System Center on it, and it'd be your System Center host as well. So it's very powerful because you can do multiple ones of those. So if I wanted to drag on for as many servers, P-nodes that I have here, I can literally build out a Hyper-V cluster, multiple Hyper-V hosts, and build out a cluster and assign a physical node to it. I would build that out with one click of a button when I hit Save and Build. I fill out all the information on the properties of that. And again, we can do the same thing with VMware. Now, we can go even a step further with VMware if I drag this out and show you. In terms of, we can load vCenter. If I click on Install vCenter here, then I can load a vCenter vApp on one of those hosts. And if I wanted to drag multiple ESX hosts up, I can build an ESX cluster and install a vApp, a vCenter vApp on it, given all this information here. And it's going to then see this new data center down here and create the data center and import that into PAN Cloud Director, and then you can use those resources. All right. Now, we don't have this level yet on Hyper-V, but we are getting to that. Currently, we can just deploy a Hyper-V host and not deploy System Center, but we are working toward that later on in the year to be able to have that same functionality as we do with VMware. Okay, so you can build out your ESX clusters really quickly. All right, so the last thing I want to do is talk about actually deploying a Hyper-V VM. And so I'm going to go into this particular customer here and show you how easy it is to sort of build out an environment. So as you see here with these two tabs in my resource catalog over here, I've got many more tabs that allow me to customize my environment even more. I've got my comms bundle here, I've got my price, and then my list of configuration. So I've got VMware and Hyper-V. Again, we support both hypervisors, and we're even looking to support more hypervisors in the future as well. So right now, let's go to Hyper-V. I've got these Hyper-V hosts set up. Let's drag out a Windows 2008 and a 2012. As you see, as I drag my VMs onto my palette, my price goes up. So this is the price it's going to cost me per month. This price and the price for all these resources are set in that CMS that I talked about earlier, that other portal I showed you. You set a cost for all these different resources. Now, if I wanted to change any of my settings here, I got 2 gig dual processing, 60 gig hard drive. Say I wanted to give a little bit more memory. I go over here to my memory tab, drag over 4 gig, and then say processing. Say I want to make that a quad instead of a dual. Drag over. And you see my price goes up for each different resource I choose. And the thing about this is again, I can have multiple different hypervisors. Say I wanted to load a free BSD VMware server in here, okay? I can do that. I can drag over some switches, some virtual switches that I've defined, and I can set my VLAN for each one of these. And then I can start to connect up my servers. Here's my little blue cable here. Connect these guys up and have multi-tiered networks and these guys talking to each other. And then I can have, say, have this guy talking to the outside world instead of VLAN for him. All right. So when I hit save and build, this is really going to do a couple different things. It's going to go out to the System Center. It's going to provision these Hyper-V VMs. As a matter of fact, I've got my, oops, now let me close that out. I don't want to do any updates. Here's my System Center that's running. So it would talk to the System Center and provision those VMs. Much like in VMware, it's going to go talk to vCenter, which I've got my vSphere client up and running. Then it's going to go and talk to, and it's going to build out this VM in VMware. All right, it's got your total cost. You can do things like lease this environment. You can send out a quote. So if somebody wanted to see what it looked like and how much it was going to cost before it got built. You could add things like application. You could do tiered storage. Again, very flexible, very customizable. You can even create templates off of a host or an environment to make it even easier for users to come, and they can just drag a template over and build it out as is. You know, I hope this was helpful. If you want a little bit more, I wasn't able to get too in-depth. We only had about a half an hour. But, you know, if you want to go more in-depth, I can give a more in-depth demo. You can let us know, email me, or go on our website. And you can also look there and email and request a more formal demo as well, where I can go really in-depth if you've got, if you want to learn more about it. I don't know if there's any questions. Let me look. Okay, I see one question. I see that user from company ABC is able to see the names of the other companies. I'm thinking of it as security exposure. Is there a reason why this is shown to users? That's a very good question. I've asked that question to our engineers as well. They are looking at doing that. I agree that if you have a user, they should only be able to just see their environment. We do that sort of level on PAN manager side, currently not in the PAN cloud director side. But again, very good question. I'm looking to see if we can sort of fix that, I guess, so to speak, and I agree with you. That seems to be the only question that I have. Again, thank you for taking time for today's webinar. Go to our website, egenera.com, and you can request a more formal demo. And I hope to hear from everybody soon. Thank you.